just one thing, if anyone has a question, do you want people to just ask or write it in the chat?
Yeah, as usual, write it in the chat. If it's something like urgent in terms of understanding, you can also unmute and ask the question this way. I think we have no clear rule set. This always worked on a case-by-case thing. Usually, if we will gather the questions in the end and then go through them, especially if they are bigger topics. But everything, if you don't understand something, just ask your question.
Yeah, exactly. And if if you don't know if it's the appropriate time, then ask the question or write it in the chat, and then I can decide if we do it now or later, or we'll just see how it goes.
Yes, and Arthur and I will keep an eye on the chat and then see if
that's
we can
good.
Do it right away or right at the end.
Because I only have 2 screens here, so I cannot have Teams open meantime, so I don't see what's happening in the chat.
Okay, so then welcome everyone to the first 2021 meetup of our user group, and very happy to have Daniel as a speaker today on a very cool topic in the Power Platform kind of space, also not Power BI only, but with a strong Power BI focus on the Powerapps, Canvas apps functionality. And so you can write back data, as I said also earlier, like a really cool use case for Power BI users, which is probably the most important or most interesting feature, I would say. So as we just said, keep your questions coming in the chat. We'll keep an eye on them. And with that, I hand over to Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome everyone. As you already know, since you tuned in, we have a subject today of how to create Power BI reports with Powerapps inside for writeback functionality. And the reason why I would like to discuss this topic, even though this is actually a functionality that has been in Power BI since, I believe, 2018. So it's not even a new feature, but it's not something you stumble across every day. Also, so I think it's a very cool feature, and what we want to do is not only to integrate the Power App inside a Power BI report, it's also to actually make sure that the data, whenever you change them in the Power App, is updated immediately in your report. So it's not that long ago since I sat next to a customer who was with a project portfolio management tool, where they asked me, but can we somehow in Power BI, when looking at our project planning and start and end date and so on, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually change the data of these projects while we were looking at our overview and do the project planning at the same time? And then I thought, yeah, that's quite cool, and I believe that is actually possible if we create a Power App and integrate it in Power BI. And then I remembered that, well, this functionality actually exists. So just like I talked a little bit with Christoph about, I mean, you don't come across a lot of use cases, but this is not the first time I've heard about customers talking about, is it possible somehow to edit the data in Power BI or even in other BI front-end tools as well when you look at the report? And most of the time previously you would just say, well, that's not possible, or you would have an Excel sheet on the side or whatever other tools and go in there and update the data, and then you would have to refresh and so on. But today we're gonna have a quick walkthrough and live demo on how to actually build a Power App from inside Power BI, integrate it, and when you update the numbers or add comments, then it will update in the report immediately. So that's the idea. It's a kind of a little bit of introductional level, as well as to give everyone an idea and understanding on how easy it actually is and how quick we can set it up. And obviously I prepared some of it, and it's never as easy as it looks, but at least you will see how quickly it can be done after practicing it and have some prior knowledge about it as well. So having said that, let's see if I can jump to the next slide. I don't know why it skips the 3 slides in the middle. It's because they are hidden. Anyways, we'll do it like this. But just a very quick introduction on me. I'm a business intelligence consultant, and one of the reasons why I'm on this Berlin Power BI user group as well is because I used to live in Berlin in 19 and 20 doing BI freelance. For a couple of clients back then, and then I participated in what I believe was the first meetup after you restarted the event, Arthur and Christoph, right? Wasn't it so? You restarted it back in autumn 2019. I thought it was a cool event, so then I tuned in on and participated in a couple of the virtual events as well, even though I moved back to Denmark, because of this Corona pandemic that hit all of us. But anyhow, today I'm working at a IT company in Denmark, and this is just a very brief introduction so you know who I am. We're part of Bellarmine, which is actually a Northern European group of Microsoft IT companies. So everything from ERP to BI, modern workplace, all these kind of different Microsoft areas are covered. So I will quickly run through these slides just to give you an idea of where this group is. I'm sitting here in Aarhus in Jutland in Denmark after I moved back. And spread across 6 countries, more than 30 offices, and growing as we speak. It's almost a new company added to the group every month. So and in Proactive and in the other companies as well, I'm sitting in this data and analytics team, focusing on BI, AI, and machine learning. Myself, primarily BI, but I have colleagues focusing on the other ones as well. And then we have other teams as well, focusing on cloud infrastructure and modern workplace like SharePoint and communication teams, business applications. They actually develop Powerapps. So we could easily find someone there that knows a lot more about Powerapps than I do. And that's also why today's Powerapps in a Power BI context and how we can integrate Powerapps into Power BI, not the other way around, because that would be more appropriate for a Powerapps meetup, I think. So that's quick introduction for today. This is a slide, and of course we will jump into it when we live demo. I prepared a simple dashboard or report rather. But just to be able to add a Power App and show you how to add the Power App, how to make it interactive, and how to make sure that when you change your data, it will update immediately and you see it updating as we go in the other objects. So like a Power BI object, but with Power Apps technology embedded inside. Quite cool, I believe. Or I guess. And first of all, before we jump into Power BI, I think I didn't see that the other ones were hidden, but these ones are not hidden, so I'll just jump back here. There are some considerations when you start out by doing this, and one of the main considerations for sure is the data model. Not only the tables that you connect to or import in Power BI, that data model, but also the underlying data sources, depending on how you query those data or if you import them, and so on. But we will come back to that as well. I will go into Power BI, and then we can we will just do a very quick example of importing two tables and look at the different storage modes, and I will add a little bit about the considerations that you need to do when you build this kind of integration. Another thing, minor thing, but not minor after all, is that it only works in Edge and Chrome, so you will need these two browsers to be able to build the integration, because yeah, that's just how it is. Don't ask me why. It's Microsoft. And then lastly, it's very important, actually it's decisive, that when you create this integration, and there are obviously other considerations as well, but these are the main ones. But what you also need to be aware of is that you cannot go to powerapps.com like you would normally do when you develop an app and create a new app and develop your app, or develop from a template, unfortunately, because there's a lot of good templates in Powerapps to start out from, and then further develop. You cannot do that, and you cannot, after creating your Power App that is integrated with Power BI, then you cannot edit it from powerapps.com either. You always have to open your Power App from within your Power BI report. So I will, of course, show how you will create and add existing apps and also edit existing apps. But everything has to be done from within Power BI, either the desktop client or through the browser. Previously, at least when it was in preview, it was a recommendation that you actually develop your Power BI report in Power BI. So all the report elements, standard Power BI visuals, that you develop those and the report and published it to Power BI services, powerbi.com, and then in the browser you edited the report and then added the Power Apps to be able to harness the full what's it called, the full flexibility of this integration. Work better when you integrated the Power App in the browser. It's not that much, it's not so important anymore, but I still prefer to do it like that as well, because obviously you don't have this same way or possibility of checking if the data updates instantly. If you're working in the desktop client, then you would have to hit refresh, even though you trying to develop a report with a Power App that instantly changes the data. So you have to go into the cloud anyways to get the full functionality from this instant update. Yeah, so a little bit about the considerations. I will elaborate on the data model. If we jump to, I already opened a clean Power BI. So, and I logged in, so let's just, sorry about that, get some data. So for this presentation, I created an Azure SQL database, so we will just connect to that. And here is one of the first very important.
Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah.
We still see your PowerPoint. I'm not sure if we should see something else.
Okay. Let me just check, because maybe then it is.
I can see the BI.
Yeah, me as well.
Sorry, it was okay. And then mine was stuck.
Okay. Maybe you had some lag. No, but anyways, here's one of the main considerations regarding the data model, this import or direct query. When we connect to this, in this case, SQL Server database, it could be other sources as well, like common data services or But when we connect here, we have to decide if the default mode should be import or direct query. But what we want to build today is a report where the data updates immediately. So then it's important to set this one at direct query, because you can change the storage mode from direct query to dual and import mode, which we will see in a moment. But you cannot go back. So if you start out by importing some of your tables, you cannot change them to direct query afterwards. So we will begin with direct query, and I have a connection here, and my VPN is connected, so should be able to fetch some data. Let's see. So in this case, like I said, we just created an Azure SQL DB with some AdventureWorks sample data. In this presentation, we're using a sales manager scenario where we want to update some budget. But first of all, we will just have a quick look at these things that we need to address regarding the data model. So we will just load two tables here, the budget that we want to update, and one dimension, which is customer in this case. It shouldn't take long. And then we will go to the diagram overview here. So since we're in direct query, obviously we cannot see the data. This option disappears, but if we go in here, have these two tables, then you can see in advanced, we have direct query, and because it's default, direct query here as well. And the budget table is actually the table that we're gonna connect to in the Powerapps that we integrate in the Power BI report. So in order for that to update instantly in the report, it has to be direct query, obviously, because then Power BI will reflect the changes immediately. But for other tables, we could keep sales customer as direct queries as well, but this is one of the things that, depending on the data model, underlying data model as well, that you have to decide on, because direct query obviously can put a lot of put a lot of pressure on the underlying data source if it's not prepared for this kind of scenario, or if it's a very big table or whatever. You know all the scenarios. So we don't necessarily want to have direct query on everything here. So in this case, I know for a fact that there's only about 900 customers here, so it's not a lot of customers, but still we changed this one for dual. And just to quickly explain that for those who don't know, obviously, like I said, direct query, it queries directly in the underlying data source. Import goes without saying, then it imports the data and uses the writeback engine, and then you have the dual, which I use here, where Power BI actually decides, depending on the query that you send to your data in your report or visualization or filtering or whatever, if what kind of querying option the Power BI wants to use for optimizing the querying. So the dual mode is a little bit of both, where Power BI makes the decision. So in this case, since I know the underlying data source, which you obviously would have to know in order to be able to set it up ideally. I know that budget ID is a primary key. I will come back to that later, because that is important to have a primary key for this Power BI Powerapps integration to work. But this is a primary key, and then we also have, in this case, the customer key. And I know that the budget table is a fact table, so it will have a many to one to the customer table. So we have unique values in the customer table. And I will stick to the single cross-filter direction, which is obviously always best practice, unless you have a very, 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 very good reason to use both ways. So, and we did to change it. Sorry, that was why it has this upgraded view on the diagram. So what we can see here is actually a dotted line, and what we have here is, and it was also introduced back in 2018 with the composite model, same year as this Powerapps integration was also introduced. What we have here, because we use different storage mode, is actually what we call a weak relationship. So normally if you import, you do two tables of direct query, or they're in the same storage mode, then you will have strong relationships. And there are a couple of weaknesses or differences to these. One of them is performance. Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why you at least have to consider using this weak relationship, which in this case is an implicit weak relationship. Another one that is maybe more well known is also when you do many-to-many relations. That's also a weak relation. Yeah, but I have a few notes on that as well, but I don't think that's the main topic for today. So, I mean, go check it out if you want to know more about the differences between weak and strong relationships. And it's also, you know, you have to evaluate your data model, because in this case, I decided, well, this one, like I said, has to be direct query. Then I decided to take this one into Joule, or it could also be import. So you also have to think about, is that necessary, or could I keep a strong relationship and have both of them in direct query, or if that doesn't cause any trouble with the underlying data source or performance. So there are a lot of considerations. So it's also just to explain that there are not tons, but there are a lot of considerations that we need to do in this case. I know that since this is just sample data and VentureWorks database, that it's a very simple sample data set. So here it doesn't really make that much of a difference if we choose one setup or the other. So I think, having said that, I think we will jump into the report that I pre-cooked, because I think the main topic for today is not so much how we do the simple visualizations in Power BI, because you all know that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. Instead, we will jump to this here, that I uploaded a simple report. I call it dashboard. We all know that it is actually a report, because in the Microsoft terminology, this is not a dashboard. So that's on me, but let's call it a report/dashboard. But anyways, I took in some more data than the two tables you just saw before. So here we are seeing budget achievement by salesperson, split on the countries in the customer dimension, and also in the address dimension, and the company from the customer dimension, with some different measures here as well. And already now this is pre-cooked, so I like to start from the top and move down into the details, because then I also know that if something goes wrong, then I already showed you some stuff that worked out. But it will work. But what you see here, this is a Powerapps, not Powerapps. This is a Power App. Right now we're not in edit mode, so this just looks like a regular report. But if I choose United States, everything will update. The Power App, of course, the other visualizations, as you already know from other use cases. So, and even you see a blank field here, that's just me who ran out of ideas on how to visualize this very simple data set. But so in the Power App, there is the option of adding a comment, and so here I just made a comment visualization where we can see later if we type in a comment, then it will update here as well. So we can start from here, or we and choose whatever this Power App is set up, so we can choose one of these company, and we can go in and see some details. We can update the budget, we can update a comment, or like I showed you before, the full interaction is working. So this becomes actionable in the way that I use my other visualization to say, okay, Jane Miller not performing too well, and I could even, maybe I should sort on this one instead and say, okay, Jane Miller, central bicycle specialist, from the full list over here. Yeah, well, then I want to go in and see, okay, the sales here, it's very low number compared to the total sales, so it doesn't change so much on the totals, but she's never going to reach those 5,000, so I will just update to 50 and get off her neck. And then I hit save, and then you see it updates immediately over here, and now she's doing much better on this one. I know the numbers are low, but you see that it updates immediately, and even see, we can also, let's take this one where we have a comment. We go in, and I think there should be some word wrap on this one, but anyways, we could just very quick add here, very well done, and I save here, immediately refreshes over here. So the idea is what we're going to jump into now in different steps is how do we actually set this up, because I think it's a cool feature if you have the right use cases. I mean, there could be a manager that needs to approve the timesheet of an employee, or it could be, in this case, a sales manager that follows up on some of the employees, how they are performing, or should we adjust the budget, how they're doing. We could even, it's not part of this Power App, but we could even in this Power App or in another Power App add the ability to send an email. So I know Power BI has the option that you can subscribe, and you can look into, of course, if any given number goes outside a threshold, then you can get updated by email. But using a Power App, you can make it even more flexible and send an email where you, in your Power App, actually, this is just an example, but type in a message that will be sent out with the email. So a more extended functionality than just the basic email functionalities in Power BI, and that's just, you know, a few use cases. I mean, Power Apps can do so much that it's hard to even imagine sometimes. So, any questions so far? Because I have another report here where we will jump into first inserting an existing Power App, just first see how we do that, and then afterwards we will actually try to build the Power BI or the Power App from scratch, and the integration. I will show you the elements of this very, as you can also see, basic Power App, which I haven't done a lot to for the visual outlook either. So before we move on, just if anyone has any questions so far.
There's one question regarding what we already spoke about before the talk about the subscriptions for Power Apps. Did you saw the licensing or the access to this? Did you check this again?
Yeah, if I checked up on it, or sorry.
Yeah. So if you need a subscription for Powerapps, or what's the actual licensing or subscription model for Powerapps?
Yeah, there are some additional licensing costs, so it's not for free. And I just quickly looked it up because I couldn't remember the numbers, but it's the same price for as Power BI. So if you want to run one specific app, then it's another $10 per user per month. So I mean, it is, if it's obviously it's not something you necessarily going to roll out to hundreds of people, but in those cases where you have like a manager that needs to approve something or follow up on the budgets, because Linda here probably don't have the option of changing her own budgets, but the manager does. So it will have to be for use cases where there is where it makes sense to add this extra cost, because as I see here, it's $10 per user per app per month, and then you can pay $40 per user per month then for an unlimited number of apps to run it. So I don't believe that it's something you will send out for all your Power BI users, but it is something that is useful for maybe managers or people like that. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And then I think one more question was if it's also possible with Power BI report server. So on-prem Power Apps usage, I mean. But I don't think so, right? But
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. But that again, that brings us back to, I mean, if you want the full flexibility, then the recommendation is to bring it into the cloud. But if it's possible, I'm not sure about that. I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. No other questions so far.
Okay. Good. So, in order to get started, because it is actually quite easy to get started, I understand that the licensing is probably, I guess, also one of the reasons why it's not very widespread, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be functional for at least, or doable for some users, I guess. And it's not that I have any interest in Powerapps licenses being sold, because I'm not working in Microsoft. But anyways, it's I just think it's a very cool use case. So in this report here, I removed the Power App because now we're gonna introduce it ourselves. So just any other Power BI report that, it gives me an overview, but what can I do about it? And now I have to go into Powerapps and use that Power App that my IT department developed for me to actually make an action on this Power BI report. So now we're gonna integrate the existing app. That's the same app as I have in the pre-cooked report, just to show how easy that is. We'll just hit edit, and we will take in the Powerapps visual. Sorry, didn't see that it was so here. Sorry, jump back. My bad. I will push the mouse here so it's not inside another visualization, and then choose Powerapps. And I just, for convenience, already have the numbers on the side here, so we make sure that it fits the specific report and the size. So in this case, when we want to add a Power App, and that's what I also mentioned earlier, is that we need to build from inside Power BI. Now this is In this case, we're just embedding an existing app, so the integration is already set up inside the Powerapp, but it's more or less the same procedure afterwards when we try to create the app. So here, which is also explained here, we need some data in our Powerapp to get started. So I will put in the primary key, which is what makes sure that Powerapps and Power BI, even though we integrate it here and it looks like it even for the untrained eye, it looks like the Powerapps is part of Power BI. It's still two different technologies, but the underlying data is interpreted in the same way because of this primary key across the two applications. So that's why it's important to have a primary key in the table. So here we will just choose app, this one that I already created. It will tell me that I have to save the app, which is important to remember, but in this case we already created the app, so there's nothing to save. And same goes here. It also reminds us that anyone who consumes this report and also that also want to use the Powerapp needs to have access to the Powerapp. So the obviously the underlying data source, but that's already been given through access to the report, but also access to the Powerapp. And yeah, back to the other question, also a license, of course. So right now, this is the exact same app as we looked at before, but there's no data here. The reason for that is we only put in budget ID. And now I know, you also know, because we looked at the other apps, that we have the company name and the salesperson on the front screen of the app. So if I add the company name, it will show up in the app that we developed, and the same goes with salesperson. Yeah, so now the app is, I mean, because it's already has been developed, it's fully functional, and already it updates as well. But if we go in here, we're still missing. There's no budget on, even if we click on this one, there's supposed to be a budget of 100,000. But again, that's back to what I mentioned before. Make sure I click on. It's a little stupid this that you have to click in the white area next to the Powerapp, but inside the visualization. So you have to be aware of that. It's not enough that I just click here. Then so there are a few things that you have to that you will learn along the way, because you thought you marked it but didn't. But now I don't see this budget, but that's just because we didn't take budget into the data fields. Now we have the budget, and like you saw before, the interactions working. If I add 2 zeros to this one, it will update over here. Of course, then Jane's budget achievement is too small because we added this one, so it's 10 million. So let's just reverse it quickly. That's embedding an existing app. Quite simple when you develop the app. So the main work of getting this to work is obviously to create the Powerapp, and I decided that it would be good to have a live demo on that as well, because it is actually quite easy and quite simple, even for someone like me that doesn't use Powerapps a lot. Like you also said earlier, Christoph, I did the same a couple of years ago, played with it, and in a previous job were asked to develop an app that they could use to register data in an SQL database and like simple purposes. And I also attended the Microsoft event App in a Day, but that's also a couple of years ago, and I haven't spent that much time on Powerapps. So we're not going to take this session into a very specific Powerapps session, because there's going to be a lot of questions there that I won't be able to answer. But it could be interesting as well to also look into in the Powerapps user groups. The opposite integration, where you integrate Power BI in your Powerapps, which is also useful, but in different scenarios. But so jumping back to this, I will remove this one and we'll go back to Scratch, because now we will create a new one. So just because I know that this size is useful for the design of this specific app, I will just go back to these numbers. So it fits. Again, we need to add some data to be able to actually do something with this Power App. But now it's not enough to add the budget ID, because as soon as I hit create new, we will jump into Powerapps in the browser, and it will open a new tab, and the screen, the front screen that we jump into when it creates this new app is based on a Power BI dataset in this Power BI integration. So if we only add the budget ID, we will only be able to put the budget ID into our app. So we need to make sure that we add all the data fields to the app that we want to build the app, that we want to put into the app. So we know from the other one that we wanted company name, salesperson, and budget. So now we have those fields. We have the primary key that will make sure that Power BI and Powerapps always knows that it's the same record that we are looking at or updating and refreshing and so on. And hit create new. And now we jump into Powerapps. So some of you have maybe never been into Powerapps. Some have been in here and played a little bit around and so on. Now it just create from scratch, and since this always pop up with this one, even though I've been into Powerapps many times, also the last couple of days when preparing the demo, but suggest different ways of creating from blank. But it even gives us this option from the beginning, and we are actually fortunate enough that it already decided to put in the company name. All the other times I did it, it always put in the comment, which I think is, and that is a very good reason why. So already here or I'm doing something wrong, so I will leave this one. This is a little bit annoying because now I actually have to do it from scratch, but then you get to see it more than once. We'll just do it again because I forgot to bring in comment, and I thought it looked a bit weird because it always gives me the comment data field when it opens the app in the beginning, because it just takes the first one in alphabetic order. So budget ID, company name, salesperson, budget, and comment as well. Then we create, and now it should, or at least it did all the other times, because then it picks comments in the data field when we open the app. Just scroll down here. So it takes a little bit. So first thing first, if you ever try to build a Power App, and you went in through powerapps.com, you haven't seen this one before. So this element, I cannot edit it. I cannot see any properties or anything. So I cannot tell you exactly in details what it's doing. All I know is that it creates the integration between the two, but this one is only added to the Powerapps when you open it from Power BI. So then the integration is added, meaning, and by integration at this point means that this gallery, which is the object here that we can scroll through and showcase data in, it uses this data source. You can see the property here, data source, and it uses the Power BI integration from up here, .data. So this one gets the fields that we just picked in here. it's important, and it's not, like you saw before, it's not possible to just add a field here and then it will show up in here. So it has to be part of the creation. But in any case, we will just start out by best practice, just renaming these things so we know what we're working with. Now we have the comments in here. It's not very interesting to have on the front screen. So we have the data source. We want to change the comments, which is in this label here. And you see, based on this item is the data that is inherited and .comment. So comment is the field that we get from Power BI. If we can also, here we can, let's do both. Do salesperson, then the salesperson will show up, or we can go to the browse gallery and say edit fields, and then we have a more user-friendly interface if you're not comfortable with these formulas up here. And then you can also change. We'll change it to company name, and then we'll try to rebuild the app that we had before. So first of all, I'm just going to make a little bit more room. So we only have these 8 here, and we're going to take one up here. It's going to do it bigger, and we go over here. We go to insert, add label, and like in the other one, I would like to have the salesperson as well, so I can easily see who's on this client or on this customer. So we'll change this to salesperson. We'll move this one around. So now we actually already more or less, we will add some more later on when we create the last edit screen. But now we have built most of the front screen. There are some interactions with the buttons, and also a little bit on how it will behave on select and so on. So next step here is to add a new screen. We add a form, and then we are already halfway in doing this. We will say this is, and this label here. Now this, I'm just doing this to underline that it's best practice. You don't have to change these, but I will label this as a title, and see, I actually forgot it up here, so now I'm just going to do it. Label salesperson, and rename, label company name. Okay, go back to the edit screen, just sales budget. And here's the thing that even though this screen up here, or this gallery, is based on the Power BI integration data, so the data that we get from Power BI when we click in here, and to make sure that it has the cross filter functionality, the other screen is actually, even though it's the same underlying data that is accessed through 2 different applications, it's actually connecting to a different data source, in the sense that we need to be able to write back to the database. We need to add that data source. So SQL Server, and I have that connection here already. And then it is the budget table that we want to write back to. So we connect that. You see it up here, that now this data connection is also in our app. Let's jump back to here where you can see the different elements, and then we choose over here that now we're going to use this data source, edit fields, and now I can actually add the company name, salesperson, budget, and comment. And it does matter which order you pick these ones, because that's the order that they show up. Not that you cannot move them around afterwards, but then you have to start moving up and down and so on. So it's easier to just pick them in the order that you want. Company name and salesperson, that's more or less fixed, I guess. Not something that you change from time to time at least. So we change that to view, just showcase it. And the other two are has the control type edit. When you put in an edit form like this, then the default control type will be edit. So that's why they showed up with edit on all of them. So let's make room for a bigger comment box, so we can write a long and very informative comment for the salesperson. And this is just me, but in the like this to be. Okay, so now this one, it's also almost finished. Now we need to make sure that we can use these buttons up here as expected. So this one is a cancel button. We will just type back on that, so it goes back to the previous screen. And you can even put in, for those of you who don't know, yeah, some kind of screen transition as well. That's this one, and then we jump to the other one, which is a submit form, and it's actually doing what it's supposed to do now. It's submitting the data to the SQL database. But if you remember from the beginning, I think to make this even more actionable, we would like for these data to reflect immediately, because yeah, otherwise there's also no need to put it in direct query and these things. But in order to do that, we need to put in a semicolon. I will just open this one up. And then there is this one here, again, Power BI integration, not data this time, but refresh. So it automatically updates this Power BI integration. Yeah, and we can again have. And we wanted to navigate back to the browse gallery. Browse gallery or browse screen. That's the screen we want to back to, and again we want to have some kind of screen. That was nice. Okay, so now it is actually doing what we expected to do. It submits, it refreshes the Power BI integration, and it navigates back to the front screen. And what you can also see here is you get this warning or info that you are using one or more implicitly shared connection, which is basically that right now Powerapps and Power BI are using a shared connection, shared connections. So jump back to the browse screen, because now we are almost done. Sorry. We need to unselect and just, yeah, browse screen. So we need to set up here that, is it the browse gallery? Sorry, I'm confusing myself right now. Unselect. Let's try again. Unselect in the gallery. Jesus Christ. Where are you, my friend? Here. So we do the unselect, and here we want to navigate. This time the other way around to edit, and this is also where it makes good sense to actually set up or rename and have some naming practice, because it's much easier to write your formulas up here when you have self-explanatory text. So edit form 1. Edit form 1. Yeah, and again, you don't have to do this, but we'll just do it for fun. So this next arrow object here, it's when you select this one, it's just inherit the parent, and in the parent, in the browse gallery, we just set up that it should navigate to the edit form cover write. So if I click my Alt button now, I actually hit or go to the screen, and I can cancel as well. Just check if we have all of it. I think that is actually all of it. So we put in this refresh, which makes sure that it updates immediately. So now I'm gonna save it to. I hope I didn't forget anything, otherwise I'll just have to quickly look through my notes, but I don't think I forgot anything. Power BI demo, yeah, new Power BI demo, that's a good name. So I have to save it. Just very quickly, and first time you save it, it automatically publishes as well. If we jump back here, you see that it actually updates it in here, so as soon as you save and when you do changes, publish it, then it will reflect in here. So right now we already have the opportunity of getting in here, and it's saying getting your data, and that's what I thought. It's because I forgot to set, yeah. Because I jumped too quickly through my notes, we need on the edit screen as well, we need to set this one here, item. Exactly. This needs to be. We want to tell this screen here, the edit screen, what kind of data it has to show, and we do that by saying, okay, use browse gallery dot selected. And then you see now the data is here as well. So. One thing I forgot, I save again, and now I have to publish also. So the latest version of the Power App is published to the cloud, and it updates again. And now we see. Now we see it should work now. It happens from time to time that you just have to just work a little bit with it, play with it. Oh, what did we do wrong here? Is it? It's supposed to work. I think, to be honest, I believe the problem right now is that it's not yet fully updated here. It happens from time to time when you publish it, because here we are able to, from browse screen, go in here and see the data. So it is working as it's supposed to. We'll just try again. So that's where sometimes there can be some hiccups with the integration. So that's why before I tried to, yeah, so don't know why, but now they showed up. We didn't change anything. So sometimes I experienced that I had to do some cross filtering, or I had to go back and publish it again, or stuff like that. So there are, can be a couple of minor things, but now it's working. We have an app like before. So if I, yeah, we can start from over here again and see that the cross filtering is working just like before. Now we only see Linda, and we want to see or so on. Then we can go to this one. It's looking quite good, but she's already above the expected budget, so I'm just gonna hit 10,000, save it, and updates immediately. So this is just to showcase actually how fast you can build this app from Power BI and get it to work. And obviously, I've been practicing a little bit the last couple of days to make sure that there were no errors. We had one error that I fixed along the way, but other than that, very quick to set up.
I think most questions were really related to licensing. So this is what people interested the most, which makes me think like with my also speaking from myself, that this use case that you showed is really cool and powerful. And I think every Power BI user can think of use cases to use this. But the licensing of Powerapps is a bit trickier or confusing, more confusing than, for example, Power BI, where you can get started for free.
Yeah.
Then you have Pro, and then Premium for enterprise, but you can really easily get started. And this is a bit harder with Powerapps.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to get started, and then at least you would have to get started on a test license first. But yeah, obviously it is necessary to purchase this app, which is, and I agree on that, one of the, or I would say even the main reason probably why this is not more commonly used, and that's like I mentioned in the beginning. Even though it is cool and it's a cool feature and it's a way of making your dashboard report more actionable, it also puts some limitations on how many employees and what kind of roles you wanna you want to implement this for, because it's obviously not something that everyone has to go in and edit, because then you can quickly imagine that the licensing will be expensive for sure.
One thing I saw, maybe you know this, I didn't know that this exists. There is a community plan for Powerapps where you can get started for free on an individual basis. I assume that's new because I didn't know about it in the past. I know this from SQL Server and Visual Studio, but do you know about this in Powerapps?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I remember back from my client back in Berlin actually that we got started, and I started developing a Power App for them without purchasing licenses. So I don't think it's that new, but maybe it's an overlooked way of getting started. I'm pretty sure, or I'm sure that we didn't start out by paying licenses back then at least. But no, I don't know that much about this community plan, but it's definitely worth looking into. And I think it is a good way to get started also if you have a use case, because obviously it's a bit much to start out by paying from day one if you just want to test if there is a use case in the corporation. For sure.
I didn't know about. Again, I know the community plans from Visual Studio and SQL Server, which is always a good way to get started, to just learn the thing. So maybe here this also for Powerapps to get started. So you find the link in the chat for those people interested.
Okay.
Besides that, I think maybe also for if there's more questions, just post them in the chat. Last chance now.
Well, I'd like to.
Yeah. Yes, Fernando, I think.
Thank you, Daniel. Very interesting presentation, and it's an important feature that it's very useful to have. Thank you for the presentation. But then I'm wondering if you create a Canvas app normally, and then you use Dataverse as the data source. Can you connect, then create a Power BI report, connect to the Dataverse in direct query mode, and have the report updated automatically also?
So I don't know if I heard everything in the question, but you asked if I create a Power App, there's a little bit noise on the line as well. If I create a Power App with which data source?
Dataverse.
Dataverse, yeah. You should be able to have the same functionality, but again, like I mentioned in the presentation, if you create the Power App first and then try to integrate it afterwards, it's not going to work as expected, because this whole Power BI integration element is something that is added when you create it through Power BI. So, but other than that, it should be possible to, or it is possible to use that data source as well. But you just need to make sure that you create the Power App through Power BI, so you get this Power BI integration element in your Power App. Because I also tried for testing purposes to create my own app and then add it to Power BI, and you can do that, but then you don't have the cross-filter functionality. Then you will just have a Power App inside your Power BI report. So you can add any Power App, but if you want the full integration, cross-filtering, and even this instant update of the data, then you need to make sure that you have this Power BI integration element in your Power App, which is only you can only add by creating it through Power BI. I don't know if that answered your question fully.
Yeah, I have to try by myself anyway.
Yeah. But it is important to notice that, because earlier or previously when I tried this out as well, I also myself tried to. I thought, I'm used to creating Power Apps at powerapps.com, so I just go there and create my Power App, because they also have a lot of cool templates, so a good starting point. And then I was annoyed that I couldn't get it to work inside Power BI, the whole integration part. But that is because of this element that is added, this integration that's added when you create it through Power BI.
Yes, thank you. I think no more questions. Thank you very much, Daniel. I think it was as I said, really cool talk, and exactly for Power BI users. And I think the lot of licensing questions means people want to get started, kind of, and would want to implement it as well. Let me quickly, I will post it in the chat as well, one link to the Power Platform Bootcamp this year, which will take place in February. And this will again be cover the whole Power Platform, so Power Apps, as well as Power BI. And we can't guarantee it yet, but also we as a Berlin Power BI user group are planning to be there with a topic. So I just shared the Meetup page where you can sign up if you want to know more about the Power Platform as a whole. And yes, I think that's it.
Thanks
and
a lot,
I will,
Daniel. Right. So the cross-filtering was really something new and very smooth for me. I didn't expect it to be so good integrated. Very great. And for me, it's also the knowledge about the community plan is also new.
That's a good information you brought in there, Christoph, because I think it's a good way for people to get started as well.
Live search during the talk, it was like very well hidden in the licensing FAQ. But as I said, from the other tools, I like it very much. So it's like a good way to just learn it. To just, you can't use it in an enterprise context, but to get used to the tool I think it's a good way. So if it's similar to the other plans, I think it's a good way to get started.
Yeah, then one of the main things to take from this presentation, I think, is also, at least that was what I really wanted to highlight, is that we didn't spend that much time creating the Power App, even though there was a little hiccup with that the visual inside Power BI didn't update exactly as expected. Then how much time did we spend? Maybe 20 minutes creating this app. So it was, I think it's easy to get started, at least for a simple app. Then I didn't spend too much time working on the Power App, because obviously this is a Power BI forum, but you can obviously do all tons of things from a visual point of view, and also functionality wise in the Power Apps, and all of that can be integrated into the Power BI report. So I think if we take the licenses out of it, I mean, the sky is the limit. I mean, you just have to think of ways to use it, and obviously have a good business case as well. Then I think you can create a lot of cool scenarios.
Yeah, it really covers use cases that you can't do with Power BI alone, and or more difficult, of course, like with files where you enter things, but then not in the live context with direct query. Yeah, so that's really cool.
Really cool, yeah, that it can share data connections and so on. So you just live update, because it's not a question that I get often, but I've heard it on several occasions from different clients during the years, that that it is a problem that you cannot update the data, that you can only read the data. So in that sense, it's a very cool feature.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, big thank you. Really cool topic that we could cover here. Yes, I wish everyone a nice evening. Daniel, anything you want to say?
Any last remarks? Yeah, I was just remembered that actually, if someone wants, I mean, most of it can be Googled as well, but I collected 4 or 5 links on the last slide in the PowerPoint slide. So if anyone wants to have the slides, just let me know in the chat, or I can share with Christoph and Arthur as well. And there are some links for YouTube videos and Microsoft documentations and so on, as to get started, because one thing is seeing it in a live context like here, but it's also good to have the documentation for it.
That's cool, yeah. So if that's okay with you, then maybe you can share the presentation with us, and then we can share it with the group on Meetup.
I will do that.
That would be cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Maybe see you at the bootcamp. And yeah, see you next time.
Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Very good
Bye-bye.
presentation,
Thanks.
Daniel.